So in this video I want to cover the three basic methods for locating bony prominences and wide spots in feet in a ski boot. Essentially the three methods are: one, the direct method of using lipstick on the skin directly to the inside of the shell. The second method is using the a liner on the foot, marking the liner and transferring that mark to the shell. And then the third method that we use primarily for the forefoot is called poor man's X-ray, where we put the foot inside the boot and the liner in there too, and we tap on the boot, and the customer tells us where the spot is that we're looking for. There's disadvantages and advantages to each style, and we'll go over those advantages and disadvantages for each one. So the first method we want to go over is the lipstick method, and that's we use a direct transfer right to the shell with lipstick. So this works very well for any kind of bony prominence. So Gerhard has a fairly large inside ankle bone here, and we'll just use that bony prominence for this particular example. Now all we're going to do is take the lipstick and put it generously on his skin there, and then from there we want to get the shell, and we want to, and accuracy is the most important part of this whole thing. Accuracy of getting that mark onto the shell is the most important part. So we need to simulate the thickness of the bottom of the liner, which is this right here. We're going to drop that into the shell, and then we have the footbed, whatever kind of footbed he uses, to simulate that thickness also. So we're accurately depicting what's going on in the actual boot when the liner's in the boot too. So from here, we want to go ahead and put your foot in there, Gerhard, and try to avoid that shell. And so now we're going to step down onto the ground. Go ahead and step down and stand up. And now from here we need to place the foot inside the shell, fore and aft. Too far forward is a big problem. Generally we're going to have them pull your foot to the back of your heart, and maybe just a little bit of space in the back down there. A little bit further back your heart, just a little bit further back. Okay, and then from there we're going to just buckle the boot up lightly to kind of, again, simulate as close as we can to the actually being in the boot with the liner in there. And now from here, Gerhard, I need you to roll your ankle bone onto this shell over here and mark that. There you go. Perfect. Okay, good. I can see that transferred well. And from there, we're just going to take it out. Go ahead and take your foot out of there. And I can see we've got the mark in there. So from here we're going to use calipers to get the mark to the outside of the shell here. So I'll take the calipers, go down to the inside of the mark, center it up there on the mark, and then I can just tighten this up a little bit. And I can see that it's going to be right there. And I'll just take some lipstick and just put a small dot as to, that's my center of my spot to where I'm going to stretch. And then we're going to go over to the bench. So from here we want to choose the size of the knob that we want to stretch, and that all depends on the shape of the bone. So if we want to do a bigger, more general area, we're going to use a larger one, or we can use a medium one, or we can be pinpoint small with something like this. Generally for an inside ankle bone, I'm not going to use something like this. I'm going to use one of these two. So I just pop it onto the press, rustle the boot over the spot after I've heated the shell up, and then stretch that area out. So the second method that we can use is the liner on the foot method. And here we're going to mark the outside of the liner and then transfer that mark to the shell by putting the liner and the foot in the shell and then flexing on it. And the important thing about this is getting the foot in the right position on the liner. If we were just to stand up, go ahead and stand up, Gerhard, straighten your leg out. So in this, if we were just to do this and then mark it, the problem here is that his heel is not in the back of the liner, and so his foot is shifted forward, and that would give us a false read once we're all done. So it's, and again, 90% of doing a boot stretch is getting the spot in the accurate place on the shell. So we want to simulate being in the boot. So go ahead and sit down again. Put your heel up here, and we want to drive that heel toward the back of the boot as it would be in the shell. So we want his knee bent slightly forward so that there's not a whole lot of pressure in the back here, and his heel is back in the boot. And then I'm going to take the liner and wrap it up as if it were buckled inside the boot and look for that spot. And he's going to have to tell me where it is on that. So go ahead and tell me when I'm there, Gerhard. Is it right there?
Yes, yes.
And I have to press pretty doggone hard. And sometimes the customer can actually do a better job of deciding where it is. So once we've identified the spot, it's right there. We're just going to put a little mark there, and then go ahead and take your foot out. Then we're going to put the liner in the shell, and trying not to smear that mark in the shell until it's all the way in. So I'm kind of holding the liner away from the shell, and now it's pretty much all the way in there. Once it's all the way in there, I can have it touch. Now at this point, I'm going to have him put it back on his foot. Go ahead and put your foot in there. I'm going to buckle it up, and then what we're going to do is have him walk around doing a lot of flexing, and ultimately what we're trying to do here is create some movement inside the boot to transfer that mark to the shell. So, and then once that's done, we'll use the same caliper method to again mark the shell on the outside. So that's the liner method. The last method is called poor man's X-ray, and it works really well for the forefoot area, and that is the only place that it should be used. It shouldn't be used in the ankle area at all, because it really is, there's way too much padding back here for this to work. Up in the forefoot, the liner is very thin and everything's convex, and so it tends to work fairly well up in this area, and that's the only place that poor man's X-ray should be used, only in the forefoot. So we're going to go for the first med head here, which is a very common place to stretch. And we need the customer's involvement. It's very important. And what I like to have the customer do is shut his eyes and not look, because they tend to want to think they know where it is. I'll ask them to put their brain down on their foot and really feel what's going on. Plus, I'll do it 2 or 3 times to see if we're consistent. Because a lot of times customers really have a tough time feeling this. So after we've done it a couple times, they kind of get the hang of it and they become essentially better at it. So I want Gerhard to put a lot of weight on that foot, so go ahead and put weight on that foot. And then go ahead and close your eyes, so I don't want you to look, and kind of put your brain down on your foot. And I'm going to say, I'll tell the customer, I'm going to start in the back and move to the front, and they're going to tell me when I get to the spot. I'm going to start back here, well in back of where they are, so they kind of get the hang, and I'll start tapping. And then I'll ask Gerhard to tell me when I get to his first med head. Right there.
Yes, sir.
So right on the A right there, okay? So now, don't look, and I'm going to ask him to do it again. And a reason why I do want to do it a second time is to see if we're consistent, to see if he's getting the idea of this whole process. So I'll start in the back, start moving forward.
That's it.
Aha, so he was consistent, so that's a good thing when we're consistent. So we know that it's right there on that A. And from here, I can just mark it with something. And when I mark this, I really want to use something that's going to come off. I don't want to use a Sharpie, because a Sharpie will not come off this. I'll use lipstick, or I'll use a wax pencil to mark this. And then from there, I'll stretch like any other. Those are 3 methods for determining bony prominences and where they are in the shell before you stretch. And again, 90% of doing a stretch on the shell is getting it in the right spot. So these methods, using these methods, we really want to strive to use them to be accurate. That's the most important thing that we can do. That's why I do it 3 times here. That's why we're placing the footbed in there, and we're placing some kind of substitute for the thickness of the liner. All those are very important. fore aft placement when we're doing the naked foot inside the shell. You know, that fore aft placement is always a question. So we want to try to, again, simulate where it's going to be inside the liner also. So that's it. Any questions? Give me a holler.